Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Parisi, and I am Director of Global Events here at SIG. It's a pleasure of facilitating today's webinar, and I want to thank you for taking the next hour out of your day to spend it with us. Today's webinar is meant to be interactive, so please submit your questions throughout the presentation by typing them in the Q&A box. You will find that in the lower right hand of your screen as we proceed, and we will do our best to answer all questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Of course, today's webinar is entitled Workforce Transformation, Procurement's Role in Total Talent Management, presented by our partners at Hayes Talent Solutions. But before I get started, I would like to run through a few of the SIG happenings. And the first one up is in regards to global events in North America. You can attend one of our signature events or share them with your colleagues. Please check back on the SIG website often as we update information and give you all of the agenda updates for each upcoming city. All of those are open for registration, so feel free to register whenever you're ready. Our webinars are hosted weekly. You can visit our website for a complete listing of upcoming webinars and register today. Our peer-to-peer resource program is an opportunity to ask top-of-mind questions for instant responses. Those inquiries go out twice a week, and you do not have to be a SIG member to respond, so please help us out when you see those hit your inbox. And our SIG Resource Center is home to over 5,000 tools, templates, white papers, presentations, and research documents that will help make your job easier each and every day. And SIG's Career Network is housed on our website. The Career Network has postings for sourcing professionals and internship opportunities for all levels of employment, also updated frequently. And our Student Talent Outreach program is designed to find tomorrow's supply chain professionals today, all while students are still learning about the industry and honing their skills. So please reach out to me or anybody on the SIG team if you've got any questions or would like more information about any of these programs. Now, our SIG global partnerships are growing all the time, and we are so excited to announce that we have established these strategic partnerships for our SIG members to enjoy, including full access to the GEP Knowledge Bank, the industry's richest and most extensive collection of procurement and supply chain related research, Everest Group, where you can find insights and analyses to help capture greater value from your contacts and knowledge and strengths of buy-side companies. And SIGINNOVA, which combines the collective knowledge and strengths of buy-side companies to evaluate, manage risk, and to accelerate the adoption of innovation and new products. SIG has also partnered with Munu Technologies for the upcoming Impact Sourcing Summit in Uganda. For more information, please visit munutech.com. That's MUNUtech.com. And of course, our SIG Global Executive Summit is coming up very soon, taking place in Amelia Island, Florida, March 15th through 17th. This, of course, brings together over 350 decision-making delegates in attendance, and we hope you will be one of them. Registration is open, so please take a look at that. And if you or your colleagues are not registered, please do so. Now, here at SIG, we are trying to gain more and more of a global footprint. So please take a look at some of the upcoming global events on the SIG website under networking events. If you or your colleagues are in any of these cities, please feel free to invite them and encourage them to attend. And SIG University offers training and development opportunities to people in all levels of their sourcing careers. We are currently enrolling for the next semester of our Certified Sourcing Professional, Certified Supplier Management Professional, and newly launched Third-Party Risk Management Professional courses, all beginning April 15th. So please log in to get all of the information on those. And of course, we are very excited to welcome Hayes Talent Solutions to today's webinar entitled Workforce Transformation, Procurement's Role in Total Talent Management. Our presenter today, Robert Moffett, Senior Vice President, Corporate Solutions for the Americas at Hayes Talent Solutions, with a 20-year plus track record of designing, implementing, and managing resourcing services. Robert has a wealth of knowledge on the challenges and opportunities facing employers and providers in maintaining a competitive advantage in talent acquisition, engagement, and retention. As Director of Corporate Solutions, initially in Europe, then APAC, and now the Americas, Robert is one of a global team responsible for innovation and product development for Hays Talent Solutions, the Hays Management Service Program, and Recruitment Process Outsourcing Division. He has a passion for new ideas, markets, and opportunities, and has been instrumental in a number of Hays' recent global projects, including the rollout of a global research and insights program, new social media engagement strategies, the evolution of their direct sourcing approach, and a quick deploy RPO service for startup and high growth companies. And with that, I am very thrilled to bring Robert to the webinar and turn today's content over to you. Welcome.
Hi, Tim. Thank you very much for that very long and detailed introduction. Can you just confirm that you can hear me before we proceed, please?
Sound great to me, yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. And good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. What we're going to be looking today, a quick agenda for everyone. Looking at total talent management, we'll give a brief introduction to Hays Talent Solutions for those who are not familiar with us, how the worker world is changing, how that has affected both talent supply and demand, what's a total talent vision for the future, and then a number of best practices with hopefully some useful tips and hints that can be taken as takeaways for everyone to take back to their organisations. Again, some of you may be familiar with Hays, but those who are not, we are a UK-based global company. Started actually 300 years ago. So for you in procurement or supply chain, we actually started as a shipping company out of China. But we're now a purely focused organisation both on staffing and talent management. Two main arms, our main staffing arm, which is the 6th largest in the world, and our talent management, talent acquisition arm, which I represent. A couple of facts and figures. We help organisations engage with about 120,000 new hires each year. We look at about 7 million CVs and actually interview about 1 million people a year. Okay. Not as familiar in the US market as they started over in Europe, but we are a newer entrant to the US market here. So what makes us different to our competitors is what we would refer to as our talent forward approach. Now, I will come back to this a number of times, and this is keeping the talent or the resources that you require at the centre of any service or objective or vision that we have. So the presentation of what we're talking through today, this is premised on the premise that the world of work has fundamentally changed. And what do I mean from that? I mean it's from both sides of the equation here. So I'll come back and I'll refer to it as the supply side and the demand side, bring it into sort of a supply chain speak. So from a supply perspective, these are either the individuals or the companies that would want to provide services to yourself, either as an employee or in some shape or form. And from a demand side, the services or resources that you might want to engage for the future of your organisation. We said the world of work has fundamentally changed. I'll go into how we see this happen, but what has driven this? There's 4 major megatrends that we're looking at. First one in blue. So the way of building people's careers. Typically, people had a relatively linear career, worked for an organisation as an employee, maybe stayed with one organisation for a period of time. But that is the less common career now. There's a number of different ways of going to work. The gig economy, working remotely, providing it as a service. We'll go into a bit of detail on that one. So number one, the way that people have built their careers changed. This has coincided with a shortage of both the number and the number of individuals available for work and the skills profile. So from a demographic perspective, there are less people available for work, and also the skills that might have been historically required and are required in the future, there's not an exact match as well. So change in career and a change in the skills shortage. At the same time, organisations are having to become more agile and more competitive. So what they're looking for from their service providers and or employees has changed. And then the fourth one, common on any presentation on talk like this, massive changes in technology. Phrase I heard last week, the speed of change will never be this slow again. It will only get quicker. And again, very much driven by technology. A couple of facts and figures to support this. None of these will be a big surprise to you. Left-hand side, number one concern of CEOs is in trying to find and engage that high-quality talent. That is the source of the growth, of the profit, of the success of all those organisations. So from a demand side, that is the key objective. In the middle, from a workforce perspective, again, reinforcing the statement earlier that the way people engage is changing. There's a prediction that 50% of the US workforce will be on flexible contracts by 2020. To bring this in context for you, Japan, which has government statistics, in excess of 50% of their workforce are now on non-standard contracts. So they're already at that stage as well. So it's a trend that is proven and is only going to increase in these areas. However, if we're correct and the landscape is becoming increasingly more complex, both in what organisations are looking for and what the individuals who are in the world of work are also looking for, how have organisations adapted? How have they evolved to account for this? And this looks, from a supply and demand side. And the possibly controversial statement here is not enough and not quickly enough. It's still not managed holistically. There's still silos within organisations, whether it be by location, category, or function. And there are very few organisations who have a successful, holistic view of the people resources available to them within and outside their organisation. Now let's look at this from two sides. I said earlier, supply side and demand side. So let's look at it what we're calling the supply side at the moment. So these are the various different individuals, service providers, the talent, the resources that are available to you as an organisation to fire your business. What we've got here is a typical talent continuum from left to right of the various different ways that an organisation can engage with and take the benefit from the skills of talent, both inside and outside their organisation. There's an element of generalisation here. We're looking at different countries. There's different labels that are put on these. But at a headline level, we have 5 primary groups or buckets. Starting on the left-hand side, we have employees. So this is the more traditional route to work for individuals. So these would be people who would be employed by your organisation, typically on a full-time basis, but could be part-time, could be FTEs, etc. Then we move to temporary workers. These are individuals typically engaged by a staffing provider and then provided onto an organisation. And these would be on a sort of a B2C relationship. So this would be a company to individual relationship, and they would typically supplement your workforce on a business as usual or day-to-day basis. Then we move on to contractors, a relatively broad term here. This is moving more to a B2B relationship. So this is an individual or group of individuals presenting themselves as a corporate entity, and they might provide either business as usual support to your organisation, or more typically project or contract based, possibly providing skills that aren't traditionally within inside your organisation. Moving one step further, this is services. So this might be delivered on a statement of work or deliverables or milestone basis. And again, this is an individual or group of individuals or large badged as a corporate entity delivering services to you as an organisation. And then at the far end, on the right-hand side of the spectrum there, we then have capital projects. So this might be a combination of people and resources delivered in a bundled area for you. So these are the various different areas of skills and expertise, both internally and externally. Historically, the vast majority of organisations, the people within their business would be in the employee category. But it's not uncommon now for the organisations that I speak to that less than 50% of the people within their business or the people providing services within their business are now employees, and the rest are a combination of temporary, contractor services, and capital projects. Okay. So that is an overview of the various different skills, resources, or people or talent available to an organisation. How do organisations typically manage that from the buy side? Well, the simple answer is very rarely on a holistic basis. Again, taking it from left to right, employees typically fall under the remit of HR when they're in the business, talent acquisition when they're getting into the business. Temporary and contractors, typically a framework might be overviewed by procurement for the day-to-day transactions by the managers, moving over to services, business heads with procurement involvement possibly, and then strategic procurement on the capital. So procurement is the name that appears the most often, but there's very rarely one function, individual or group that has a holistic view of the entire scope of resources available. So what is our vision of the future? Or what is the vision of the future that we believe is best practice? And it's bringing together these many different strands. So the ever-changing different sources of resources, people and skills available to you, and then also bringing together the potentially currently siloed approach and engaging with it. And we call this approach talent forward. So what is talent forward? Well, imagine a new world of work where an organisation can get the best skills and talents, but at the right time, the right place, and for a fair price, and that is regardless of worker classification or source. And this is our total talent vision. And that would open up the entire spectrum of resources to you as an organisation, and you as an organisation to have a holistic view of what the best way of engaging with particular talents. And this is where the opportunity opens. I said earlier that there is no, in our opinion, there is typically no single function that has a holistic view of this particular area. But if there is one organisation or one function who probably has the visibility, the connections, and could be the catalyst and the enabler of change, that is where the opportunity we see for procurement to take a major seat or the primary seat at the table in enabling this change. I'm going to take a quick break there, and we're actually going to open a quick poll that Kim is going to run for us. And the poll question that we're just asking here is total talent strategy in your organisation. Are you embraced with it and running with it? Is it something you're thinking about? Or do you sit in the slightly more sceptical area and believe this will never happen? So I believe Kim's going to open up the poll, which will run for 30 seconds. If you wouldn't mind just feeding those in.
You bet. As you can see, there is a little time lapse going on up there. So please do run through those polling questions with the answers of A, embraced it and running with it, B, thinking about it, and C, will never happen. We've got about 25 seconds left in that poll, so take a time remaining is now 0. Time limit is 30. So let's see where we land. We should be compiling that information shortly. Now, as we wait for the results to pop up, and here we are, actually. Let's see. And then, Robert, I'd love to have your input on any kind of surprises or predictability here. The results turned out to be embraced it and run with it at 39%, thinking about it at 58%, and will never happen at 0, which seems to be possibly predictable. Robert, what are your thoughts here?
So I would have predicted B. I'll be honest, I wouldn't have predicted A. So okay. I'd have expected C to be that little higher. And there might be the cynic in me, if I'm honest with everyone. And also, let's be honest, if you thought it would never happen, then you'll be less likely to attend and talk through it an hour here. So I think some of the skeptics may have not. So I think there's still some skeptics out there, but we may not have them here. That's very interesting on the 39. But what's interesting, people that embrace it running, but still here today, So I would suggest that that might mean that they are partially way on the journey, or at least looking to check in or validate some of the steps that they are making. But I'd love to speak to some of those individuals at a later date if the opportunity does arise. So very good. Total talent is something very interesting. It's a subject that we've been involved in for the last 10 or 15 years. And it's interesting that the pace of change that we've seen hasn't necessarily been as great as everyone might wish. Well, thank you very much for that. We were going to have a quick break if there are any key questions that come out. Kim, just back to you. Are there any at this stage that it's worth sharing with the group, or should we save them to the end?
We've got, right now I would say let's save them for the end and go ahead and keep going. We're on a roll.
Thanks very much, Kim. Okay, so we're going to move into a slightly more practical area here, looking at what we've called some best practices, also hopefully some tips and a couple of stories of companies either we've worked with or are going down their own route that I hope might shed some light on where we've got to. Okay, so for us, when you're looking at this, there are 4 steps that you have to go through in looking towards or in defining your strategy or formulating your strategy for total talent. First one is discovery. This is quite an interesting one, and this is an opportunity to change people's thinking or challenge people's thinking. So here, this is looking at what your as-is state is. When you're looking at your as-is, there's very much a temptation for people to look at who we need in the business or how we need to engage them. But what I would encourage people to do is challenge people's thinking, and rather than the who and the how, look at what work needs to be done in the first question, as the first question. The second questions then lead on from it. So very much around what is the work that needs to be done, rather than immediately deferring to the who do we need to do it or how do we need to contract with them. So rather than saying I need a permanent employee or a temporary employee, what's the work that needs to be done? And then that opens the door to, could it be automated? Is this a temp? Is this a contractor? Do we outsource this? Where could we go? So again, when you're first getting these teams together and you want to frame the thinking and challenge some of the individuals, very much encourage people to look at what it is the work that we need to get done within our organisation. Then we need a bit of a reality check. The reality check kind of linked to number 1 and linked to number 3 as well. And what we're saying here is this isn't a process project. This is a people and this is a change project as well. So you need to make sure that you have the right stakeholders involved and you've thought carefully about a change management process. Again, there won't be any project or any talk where people didn't say change management is key, but this is a siloed environment, or has been a siloed environment for a period of time. So you've very much got to think, even if you have the best vision, the best as is, if we haven't thought through who do we need on the bus, and do we have them in the right seats? And who have we got taking on the journey with us? You won't get that process. And then again, from a change management perspective, is this evolution or revolution? Is there something, let's be honest, is there something that needs to be broken down first before you can rebuild, or you can build on some of your existing infrastructure or people? Number 3, once you have the right people on the bus, what is the vision? Where is it you're going? So what is the future state? And look at this from a cross-functional perspective. And I'm going to go on a bit later when we get to practicalities. There are very much competing agendas. Well, maybe not competing agendas, but different agendas. And what is important to one stakeholder may not either be the most important to different stakeholders, or in some areas may even create a slight bit of tension that's pulling in a slightly different area, slightly different direction. But again, there's a couple of tips a bit later on how we can formulate our language, and we can therefore to bring others on the journey with us. And then number 4, failure to plan is planning to fail. No, we do need a plan, and it's key that we have the objectives there, but also priorities. And again, I would encourage everyone to force rank. Anyone who sat in front of their CEO or their manager, do we want growth, profit, or risk management? And the answer is always, I want all 3. In this area as well, it's yes, but which is the priorities for them? What is the weighting for them? Where are we really looking to go for? With a broad brush and non-prioritization, again, you are encouraging yourself to maybe not be as successful as you could be. Okay, so if we're looking at discovery, reality check, vision and plan, but where do we start on this whole process? Keep it simple is our starting point. This is a very, very complex project. It's a big project. There are multiple stakeholders, multiple processes, multiple technologies, and there are multiple competing objectives. We encourage everyone to crawl before you walk and walk before you run. As I said, I've been in total talent management or versions thereof for the last 25 years. And this is a subject that has been key probably for the last 10 or 15. And I'll be honest, at the risk of alienating some or all of our audience, it's probably been embraced more outside the US than inside the US. The US has the biggest and probably one of the most sophisticated markets from process, cost and efficiency. But from agility and sophistication, I would argue that there are countries and organisations outside the US that have gone a little bit further. The saying, keep it simple, crawl before you walk. For every successful project that I have been involved in or I have worked on, there are 20 total talent projects that are sitting in a dusty spreadsheet that didn't get past the planning stage because we didn't manage to incorporate everyone. But to articulate this, I've worked with our company has worked with 2 investment banks over in Europe for the last 10 or 15 years, still work with both. And both of them have looked to embrace a total talent approach a number of times over the past 15 years. Both the same resources, both the same ambition, both the same outlook. One of them has looked at what I might call a big bang approach on 2 or 3 occasions in the past 15 years, and still to this day is operating a siloed approach with temporary, those 5 categories I had earlier, being looked at almost entirely in their silos. The other organisation, less than 2 miles away geographically, has looked at it on a more incremental approach, starting with their temporary recruitment, looking at their statement of work, then looking at their contractors, then looking at how they can get direct sourcing, then looking at how it incorporated with permanent recruitment. Took a lot longer, but they've gone a lot further. So a little bit of the tortoise and the hare there. So the hare, much more speed in the first instance, but the tortoise winning the race in the long term. So I'm not suggesting just go slow for the sake of it, but an incremental approach can be the way to go. But where do you start then? So consider prioritising. Look at your organisation. You can look at spend, you can look at population, you can look at locations, you can look at risk, you can look at business criticality. Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. There is no one answer that will fit all organisations. However, most of the successful projects that we have seen have grown from a similar environment. And that has been from the temporary recruitment bucket or the temporary recruitment area. However, so the reason for that, it's a good foundation. It penetrates most parts of your business. It is already a relatively complex service, and the services that you're looking for is very analogous to the other areas. So, a temporary service is still about talent, still about getting the right individuals, so it plays across to permanent hiring, but it's still about service providing and getting resources on whether it's a temporary basis or a time-limited basis, so it's analogous to statement of work services and capital projects as well. Interestingly, though, people who have set up or run a program, a project, or a framework that manages their temporary recruitment, depending on when it was set up and how it was set up, sometimes the exact thing that make that project or program successful actually proves a hindrance to it expanding into those other categories. So exactly what you're intending it to do is now stopping you achieving other areas. Not in all cases, but I'll explain what I mean. This is a diagram we use just to explain what we mean around the management of the temporary workforce or the contingent workforce, we would call it. So on the left-hand side, we have the work to be done and the managers, and on the right-hand side, we have the talent that you bring into your organisation to perform that function. In temporary work, it typically comes through staffing providers, and then in the middle, there is often a function that is responsible for the management of that supply chain. This can be either internally or externally managed, so You could have a contingent workforce function within your organisation. You might engage with a company that provides a managed service program and MSP externally. But typically within that, there is a service provision, an element of payroll, vendor administration, and often a vendor management system as well. What I said earlier is that the objective it was set up to might be a hindrance to growth in the future. Again, what do I mean by that? Most of these were set up in a command and control function. They were set up as gatekeepers. Pre-2008 and the global financial crisis, and for a long period after that, these were set up to manage cost and manage risk. Okay? So these were set up to tell managers what they couldn't do. So don't use that supplier, don't go outside this bit, don't pay over this amount, don't do this, don't get these workers in, don't work with this supplier, which was appropriate to the environment that we were working in at the moment. But again, is now in a talent short market. The frame of reference has changed. And then when we look at the other stakeholders that we were talking about, looking at talent acquisition, looking at HR, you're looking at a project manager, you're looking at a business head. Although all of them will have an eye on cost and risk management, it is unlikely that it is going to be the #1 priority for one of those stakeholder groups. So a service that was set up to manage cost and risk may not be the agile, scalable and responsive model that they're then potentially looking for both in temporary workers now and in the other categories. So what does it look like then? So firstly, it's a change in mindset. We describe it as enabling, not controlling. So this is moving from explaining what people can't do to telling them what they can. So rather than don't use that supplier, don't go down this area, you can't do this, this is giving them options. That's the work you need to get done. These are 2 or 3 of the different areas that you could go down. So we're moving it from a cost and risk as the primary objectives to looking at increasing the talent or skills, increasing the experience of all the stakeholders, and increasing the speed to market as well. And again, a tip for you, that is the language that we should use when dealing with the various different other stakeholders that are involved in a project like this. I know very well that cost and risk is very important to both myself and all the other individuals, or a number of the other individuals on this call. Okay? But again, believe me, if we can deliver the talent, experience and speed objectives that these individuals are looking for, the cost and risk benefits will flow on. They don't have to be led with, they will be delivered just as part of the service, but getting that service expanded, getting individuals to buy in, the language we're using is talent, experience and speed. Okay? So I said it's enabling, not controlling, right? Nice phrase, but what do we really mean by that? How do we make it an enabling service? So first, #1, we increase the options for those managers. If they have just one route to the market or a limited options for them, then they may be encouraged to, or the option for them is to look elsewhere. If we can provide them with multiple options, so we can bring in the service providers. So going back to our statement of earlier, both temporary workers, then if we can bring contractors, independent contractors into one of the options for them, with obviously all the appropriate controls, we can bring service providers into the equation for them. This may be one-off, this may be time and materials, this may be a statement of work, but giving those options as well. And even in some instances, going as far as those capital projects. Then underneath, we've got the marketplaces. These are the new and different ways of engaging with talent. So these are some of the online marketplaces, tend to be referred to as freelancer marketplaces or freelancer market systems. This is ways of actually working with work from home individuals, piecemeal work, sending work out to them. So what work do you need to get done? And then as a service provider, if we can say you can go down route A, B, C or D, we're going to get increased buy-in to the service. The increased buy-in to the service means we as procurement, or we as the individuals running the service, will then have greater visibility. Greater visibility gives us greater control or greater influence. Greater influence, an aggregation of spend is going to have that knock-on effect, delivering that cost and risk benefit. Okay? So we've said to our end users, this is around talent, this is speed, this is experience, and it is. But the knock-on effects or the downstream benefit is the cost and risk benefits, which I know is important to us as well. Increasing the choice even further, we can introduce what we call direct sourcing. Direct sourcing is, rather than relying on external providers to find and engage that talent for you, can we do it ourselves? This has brand benefits, this has speed benefits, this has experience benefits, and this has engagement benefits. And again, common theme, often has a reduced cost benefit for the organisation as well. And this is when we're tapping into HR and talent acquisition as well. This is where there is a dual benefit, a shared benefit. What is the talent pool? Can we increase our breadth? Can we increase the penetration in the talent community? Can we use talent for both temporary roles and permanent roles? Can we join systems? Is there CRMs that we can use across CRM, candidate relationship management? So bringing in the service providers and the marketplaces, got the engagement from the project managers, the program managers, the people who need to do the business. Introducing direct sourcing and gets engagement from talent acquisition, brings the engagement from HR. Also gives us an opportunity to leverage new technology. Brings the CIA on board. Unless there isn't the bandwidth to do all the integrations. But it gives us an opportunity to not only be doing the right thing, but also be seen to be doing the right thing as well. Gives us PR benefit, gives us a little bit of a brand pickup. It's the organisation that's doing something a bit different and engaging directly with our talent, who in numerous cases are also our customers as well. So what we've done is change the outlook or the methodology, changing from controlling to enabling, changing from the no department or the no process to the yes process, and then putting some other tangible bits onto it. Service providers, marketplaces, direct sourcing, new technology. And then going to that continuum I had earlier, therefore that brought in the contractors, therefore it brought in the service providers, brought in some of the capital projects, that's probably a next step if we're honest with ourselves. And then it also starts engaging with our HR and talent acquisition to bring in our permanent hiring as well. So what we've done is provided tangible, different ways to engage with those various different stakeholder groups to help them buy into a total talent approach. And the more and more we look at it as one holistic, allows us to make enterprise level decisions across the board, and so it gives us a benefit in all of those different categories. The various different, the talent has increased opportunity. The end users, the managers, the project managers, have increased talent for them to engage with. And then from a corporate perspective, we're aggregating our spend. We're increasing our risk control measures as well. So it really does tick all the boxes across all of those stakeholder groups. So that's how we see total talent. They're the sort of various different tangibles, the tangibles that we can build in. What we're going to do now is just talk about a couple of the key building blocks that we need to talk about or we can implement that help facilitate on this journey. Okay, number one, a decision model. So decision model would be sat at the beginning of, on top of, the front of, wherever you want to put it, of a total talent approach. And this goes back to my statement earlier of looking at what work is it you want to be done, not what person do you want or what organisation you want to deal with. So once you've defined what work you need to be done, the attributes of that piece of work will then lend itself or are likely to lend itself to a particular type of organisation, individual or type of engagement. There's no one-size-fits-all on here as well, but there is a working, as an organisation, thinking what within your risk, cost, talent profile, what is the best way of working with your managers. And then once you've actually got to this decision, actually enabling it either through a technology or I'm actually seeing increasingly organisations are having a function that deliver this, actually a people function. So people and technology-based function that actually works with a manager to help advise on the different channels that that organisation might be able to pursue. And then once you've done that, it then allows you to channel everything in the right direction. Goes back to the diagram of earlier. You have your service providers, you have your freelancer marketplaces, your direct sourcing, your temporary workers, your staffing, making sure that rather than predetermining which of those is the route you're going to go down, looking at the attributes of the work that you need to get done and how does that fit together. Second up, managing the risks. I said earlier, everything in this is a people. It's people on both the supply and the demand side. The demand side is you and your organisation. Your organisation is a body corporate, but the reality is most of the people within here are individuals wanting to get their work done in their area. So we have to bring them along on the journey. And the individuals or service providers on the other side are also individuals. So again, there is a very much a change management and risk management process here. We have to be able to talk their language. We have to have a engagement process and bring those individuals on the journey. I said earlier, for every one successful, there's 20 that were unsuccessful. And the two key reasons for unsuccess is either having the wrong people engaged, or just as damaging, actually having the right people engaged, but not actually understanding what was important to them, or most importantly, being able to speak their language. That would be the finest one, like the bonus tip, definitely around transforming language. So I, historically, if you went back in my career 10, 15 years, most of the time I sat opposite, well, often alongside procurement individuals from the organisations or partners that we worked with. And the language I used was very much around cost and risk. It was appropriate to the single category that we were looking at. It tended to be temporary recruitment, and that is the environment that we worked in. Increasingly, though, although procurement will be a key individual at the table, there's often 4, 5, 6, 7 other people sitting at that table as well. And the language they talk is different. Again, I'm not suggesting that they don't have an eye towards cost and risk, but the key to them is getting that work done. As I've often said before, you speak to a project manager, would he rather be on time and over budget, or miss his target and be under budget, and he'll pick option A every day of the week. Again, that is the language he speaks to them. What we're going to help him do, or she do, is deliver on time and on budget as well. But it's very important that we understand that speed, talent, skill, and experience are important to these. So that is the language that I would recommend that we are using when we're engaging with these stakeholders, accepting that it flows down into our cost and risk benefits in the medium to long term as well. Yeah. So after 40 minutes, I hope that brings us to a quite timely end. I'm going to, I think Kim just dialed in. I think I heard you. I'm going to open it up to a couple of questions. I hope there was some benefit there as an overview, but a couple of tangibles and stories that would also help you. I realise it's very difficult to cover everything in 40 minutes, so more than happy to take more some questions now, and I think Kim's also going to open up some other channels for us at the end. Kim, is it okay if I pass back to yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert, and thank you for all of that really important content. And as you mentioned, you may go ahead and type in any questions and we'll voice those for you. We would love to hear from you and hear what's on your mind. But I do have a few questions to run through. And the first one is, you suggested to start with contingent. Since you work for an MSP, how do your programs typically expand beyond traditional supplier management?
Did you say how or have? Sorry.
How? How do your programs typically expand beyond traditional supplier management?
Okay. Well, if I can take the question in two ways, if we're talking about which areas does it function into, or how do we achieve that, might be the two interesting ones. So 10 years ago, there was a focus on trying to combine temporary and permanent recruitment. So trying to bring those two together. And one was largely held by HR and one was largely held by procurement. And there were more failures than successes. The last 5 years has seen the growth move and the initial growth move down the other end of that continuum I showed you earlier. So there's a lot of consistency or similarities between temporary, contractor, statement of work and capital projects as well. And again, I think the challenge initially a number of years ago was talking about it as a cost and risk play in the first instance. And again, there was a resistance from the end users, the project managers that were using it. But when we're working with suppliers now, and we're like taking the work away from them, providing them the administrative support, the process support, and opening up new vendors to them and making recommendations on which vendors. So whereas historically we're saying you can only use one, or someone may have said, this is your list of vendors, don't go outside it. Now if you're saying, we're now performance managing, this is the feedback, we effectively have a trust pilot type score for most of the different suppliers. That historically you've dealt with A, B, and C. Now you've got D, E, and F, and we can rank them in this area, and therefore people are even more increasing demand for the service. So that's how it grew into statement of work. The increasing tie-up with permanent recruitment is around shared talent pools and experience for individuals who want to work for an organisation. There's increasingly people out there in the world who don't want a permanent job or a temporary job, they want the right job. So, rather than say you've got to go down route A for one and route B for the other, why don't you give them a single entry to that organisation, and then, you can look at the different engagement model at the other side. So rather than trying to bring together both temporary and permanent vacancies, which I think historically is what organisations have done, trying to bring those two processes together, actually looking at it from the other end and bringing together your two talent pools, which then flow into those, is where the success has been generating a lot of traction in temporary and permanent recruitment joining up.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That was a very thorough answer, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to move on. Once again, I just want to encourage people to put in your questions, and I will get to them if, providing we've got time. But I'm going to move on down to the next one, which I really think applies to pretty much all companies. And it reads, our HR and TA teams are solely focused on hiring and managing employees for our company. How can I help them see the bigger picture? Yeah,
that would be, going back to my answer of earlier, we've turned the services on our head. So our services used to 10 years ago, I sat in front of a client and he said to me that the problem with a lot of the service providers in talent management is they're all pointing in the wrong direction. So everyone's focused on internally within my organisation, trying to affect change around, trying to get TA to think differently or HR to think differently. What you want to do is look outwards and look at the talent community. If you can deliver the benefit, and you can bring to us to the table a different way of working or an increased option for them, you'll then start having HR and talent acquisition starting to ask you. So make this real for you. We now have a talent pool for an organisation where we manage the temporary recruitment, and that now feeds into HR and talent acquisition for their permanent hiring. So we didn't try to smash together the temporary hiring, the permanent hiring inside the organisation. What we did is actually looked outside and looked at a joined up approach for finding and engaging with that talent. And instead of HR and talent acquisition now coming to us saying, how can we benefit from what you're doing, rather than trying to go look internally and trying to affect the change within that organisation. So that, for me, that dynamic of looking outwards, not inwards, has been a fundamental change for enlightened organisations in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, excellent strategy. I love that. Okay, moving on. On the MSP 3.0 slide, you mentioned direct sourcing. I hear that word tossed around a lot in the industry. What does it mean to Hays, and how do you do it? Okay,
someone's been reading the slides very well. Thank you very much for that.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Direct sourcing is a phrase that's used by a lot of people to mean a lot of things. So specifically to your question, what does it mean to us? So we've been doing it, and again, at the risk of alienating some of the audience, this is something that's been quite common in Europe for 10 plus years. So this is organisations rather than relying on an external company, a staffing agency or otherwise, to find and engage talent on their behalf, that organisation doing it themselves. So for our customers, we have a client branded function that does it on their behalf. There's no reason you couldn't do it yourself also. It's basically taking the skills, the experience and the approach that most organisations have used for permanent hiring for the last X years and deploying that for your temporary or contractor hiring as well. So I'm not talking about managers doing it themselves. So it's not, I wouldn't regard it as self-service, because, managers have got other things to do. A finance person should be doing finance, a projects person should be doing projects. So it is still a service that's provided either by an external function like Hays, or as I say, you could get your talent acquisition or another function to do it, but it's going out and engaging with talent who want to work for you as an organisation. The way I describe it to people is, if you as a company, if there's somebody down the road who wants to work as a temp or contractor in your organisation, how would they go about it? If they wanted a permanent job, they go onto your job board and apply for a job. If they were an application developer and they wanted to work, other than if they knew the head of application development in your organisation, how would they get in? How would they get in your organisation? And it's creating an avenue for them to get in and also to find and engage directly with those individuals. Sorry, Kim, I spoke over you.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I think I spoke over you. I'm glad you finished. I do have another one that is sort of probably a two-part question and actually a bit interesting to me. It reads, what factors should go into the decision-making process when considering what work should be done by employees versus non-employees or contractors versus third-party service providers, and or what type of work should be done by internal employees versus non-employees?
Oh, do you have another 4 hours?
I was wondering if that one was going to be a long one or not. But it's interesting, right?
It's a brilliant one, and there is an answer to it. There are a number of answers to it. The answer, we actually took this slide out because there are a number of considerations. There's no answer that fits all organisations. When I said, have you got another 4 hours, this is a workshop. We work with organisations. You've basically got to look at the work in a number of different facets or dynamics. So you've got to look at the work. Is it time limited or otherwise? So look at the work you need done. Is it time limited work, or is it ongoing work? Is it business as usual? Is it expert done? And then you've got to look at the skills that you need to get it done. So is it skills you typically have inside or outside the organisation? You've got to look at it as a matrix. So it's different for organisations. If it's incredibly business critical but time limited, does it make sense to have a permanent employee, because what they're going to be doing afterwards? Whereas it's ongoing and business critical, you need to keep the IP, then that's possibly something you want done by an employee. So there's three different factors. You've got to look at the work. You've got to look at the work that's got to be done. You've got to look at the skills skills or expertise that you need to be and that need to be done as well. And there's a matrix across the two. So there's a workshop we run with a couple of it's run with organisations, and each company has a slightly different approach to it. But there are some common building blocks that you require. I'm more than happy to spend the 4 hours if someone would like to.
Right, I was going to suggest that it really opens the door to reaching back out to connecting more on that subject. So anybody who is interested, please do reach back out to Robert on that and perhaps seek out those workshops. That sounds quite interesting as well. As time is ticking away, we've got about 7 official minutes left in today's webinar. So continue to send in your questions. And the next one that I'm going to read is, I often see companies limiting their consultants or employees because they prefer a permanent resident in the U.S. Can you please provide success stories about companies that have embraced a global talent pool using this flexible mode?
Yeah, it's increasingly a focus, and not as many people or not as many organisations have broken it as you might like. The challenge is we have a number of organisations, a number of our customers work in a regulated environment in some shape or form, so be it financial services or pharmaceutical. So the options available to them are slightly more limited. The freelancer marketplaces are one of the areas. So this is effectively homeworking. This is working that is done via a platform, and therefore engaging a public talent pool that is effectively worldwide is becoming increasingly common. But there are a number of organisations that, for various different security ones, still require individuals to be on their network or near their network, or there's other ones. So some organisations, there aren't that many massive success stories. It is one that organisations are working through. But I suppose we're increasingly working with our customers to at least encourage them to look at the virtual talent pool, at least on a domestic basis. So, for example, we work with a pharmaceutical organisation. There's a job they look for which is called biostats, which is very important to them, it's statistics. You know, if they look at the 30-mile area around their organisation, you know, they're not going to have that talent pool. Whereas at least if you're looking at the whole of the US, it does give you the opportunity to expand that talent pool by 20, 30-fold. Some of those organisations haven't yet got to the stage where they're comfortable with that work going abroad. But I think organisations are increasingly at least looking at the entire domestic pool, if not the full international one. But it's an interesting challenge for us and other organisations, and it's something that we're working with them at the moment. But ones in a less regulated environment who can take the risk on themselves and are having a little bit more success on it. But I will say a good proportion of our clients live in that regulated environment, which does provide some framework we have to work within.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see, the next one reads, our procurement organization is primarily measured and incentivized on driving cost savings. Will this approach help?
Yes, it goes back to it. I mean, I said earlier, the number of projects that went with a cost lead that didn't get off the drawing board would be significant in the past that I've worked with or on or been approached about in the past 10, 15 years. But the accepting that is important to you, the way to achieve that may be through another objective. And so going back to just using the direct sourcing as an example, if we present direct sourcing as a cost-saving initiative, it may not have the enthusiasm and buy-in. If it's presented as a way of getting talent they hadn't previously got, you know, engaging with them in a first person and time to onboarding them quicker, you know, then that is something that is attractive to the other stakeholders in it. The fact that it might be 15, 20, 25% less than a route they're currently using is just the added benefit. So the benefit that might be not solely important, but one of the benefits that is important to a number of the individuals on this call is a flow down from the other one, that the route to achieving that may be through engaging the stakeholders through the benefits that's important to them.
Perfect. Okay, and what will possibly be our last question as time is ticking along reads, total talent management has been talked about for years, yet it sounds impossible to achieve. Is anyone actually doing it?
Yeah, IT comes. Oh, no. Well, interestingly, the person, whoever it was, didn't click C, will never happen. So maybe they're not quite as negative as they're first presenting it. Yes, it has been talked about for ages, and in my personal opinion, it's the reason it hasn't been achieved is we've been either trying to go around it, or people have been trying to deal with the wrong stakeholders or the wrong message. I don't think there's much of a disagreement that it would be better for an organisation to treat its talent. It's how do we go about it and how do we get there. So, and interestingly, there's been more success in joining up temporary contractor, statement of work and capital in the past 5 years than perhaps in the previous, trying to join up both temporary and permanent recruitment. But IT companies are the best at doing it, particularly IT services companies. So IT services companies tend to adopt a very agile model and sometimes work in quite competitive margins. So their ability to deploy their resources quickly and efficiently is the overarching bit, and therefore they don't have the luxury of looking at silo 1, silo 2 and silo 3 of talent or resources within the organisation, and therefore they are much better at dealing with the others. So outside the US, we have more total talent services that we deliver for our customers in the IT services sector than any other sector. And, you know, it's We would deploy temporary, permanent, and contractor employees to them that are then delivered on to their own customer, because that's the flexible approach or model that they work with. So IT services would be my poster boy or girl for looking at that approach.
That's great. I think this topic could go on and on. As you said, do we have another 4 hours? I wish we did, because we are technically at the top of the hour. So I have no choice but to close this out for today. And I really want to thank you for being here and presenting everything. I want to thank everybody who joined us and presented such thoughtful and interesting questions. We actually have perhaps even more questions that we can field via email or other sources. And I would like to invite you to reach out to us if you'd like any more information on today's webinar, slides, et cetera. And I want to thank you, Robert, for being here with us today, and the entire Hays Talent Solutions team for sharing everything that you did with us. We really look forward to connecting with you again soon. We hope to see you at the summit in March. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thanks to everybody for joining.
And thanks very much from me for attending. And thanks for the questions. It is nice to engage and hopefully share and receive the feedback.
Agreed. Really great group today. So once again, thank you so much and have a really fantastic rest of your day. We'll chat soon.
Thank you.